Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Up to 4,000 jobs at the Belfast factory of the Canadian-owned Bombardier plane maker are under threat after a trade ruling by the US government. It follows allegations by the rival American plane manufacturer, Boeing, that Bombardier has received illegal subsidies from the British and Canadian governments. The US ruling, if confirmed, would impose an extra 220% tax on Bombardier planes exported to America. Tonight, as our business editor Simon Jack reports, the Defence Secretary Sir Michael Fallon has threatened retaliation against future Boeing contracts in Britain.
Thousands of jobs at Northern Ireland's biggest manufacturing employer could go if US rival Boeing succeeds in having tariffs of 220% imposed on Bombardier planes sold in the US. Leaving the Belfast plant today, workers were understandably concerned.
Yeah, there is worry there, general worry from everybody. Yeah, we weren't expecting 220%, to be honest.
It's all up in the air, so it is, but it is what it is. We can't do nothing about it, you know.
Very disappointed, yes. I think they're being bullies about it. There's no doubt about it.
If the planes achieve the expected demand, it means a lot of employment in Ulster.
The aerospace industry has a long history in Belfast. Formerly known as Short Brothers, it's been here since 1948, and to this day it remains a huge part of Northern Ireland's economy. Last year, it paid £158 million in wages. It accounts for over 8% of all Northern Ireland's exports, and it sources parts and services from 800 companies in the UK and Ireland. The whole future of this plant here in Belfast is designed around the success of the plane onto which these wings will be attached. So any threat to the C-Series plane programme is a direct threat to potentially thousands of jobs here in Belfast. Boeing has a powerful cheerleader. Companies that receive subsidies and use them to sell cheaply in the US, as Boeing claims in this case, are the enemy of President Trump's America First policy. But politicians here have started firing back.
This is not the kind of behaviour that we expect from a long-term partner, and I've made that very clear to Boeing when I met them earlier in the summer, and I've also made very clear to the new United States ambassador in London. This is not the behaviour we expect of Boeing and could indeed jeopardise our future relationship with Boeing.
The plant itself is in a constituency held by the DUP, which the government relies on to pass laws, so it's getting Westminster's full attention.
The Prime Minister on our behalf has raised this issue with President Trump and Prime Minister Trudeau. So at the very highest level we've been emphasising how important this is. Thousands of jobs depend on this, hundreds of millions of pounds in terms of the Northern Ireland economy.
There's a long way to go in this increasingly acrimonious journey. A second ruling will be made in February next year, and even that can be appealed. Meanwhile, on the factory floor, the possibility of being shut out of your biggest market will cause lingering concerns. Now, Northern Ireland is essentially in the crossfire in a trade dispute between the US and Canada. And these countries are their nearest and closest trading partners. In fact, they've got a trade deal, so it's perhaps a reminder as the UK looks to find new trading partners as it leaves the EU, that even close, even special relationships can sour. George.
Simon, thank you very much.
Now, Britain is tonight embroiled in a potentially damaging trade row with America. It began as the US slapped huge import taxes on the aerospace company Bombardier, putting hundreds of UK jobs at risk. The government warned that could endanger Britain's defence contracts with the American firm Boeing. Our political correspondent Paul Brand explains.
At Bombardier, they're building a fleet and preparing for a trade war. The Belfast plant in their marketing video employs 4,000 people making wings for commercial planes. But now America's decided to triple their price and put all this at risk by imposing huge tariffs.
There's not that kind of job about it. If we were to close, there would be nowhere for 4,000 people to go. We couldn't fill the jobs. So there'd be a lot of people out of work.
I suppose the big knock-on effect is with everything else, all the other different contracts as well. Whether that's going to have an effect, we're not really sure, because again, we haven't really been told much.
And there's plenty of other work on the go, so I'm sure that'll keep us buoyed if needs be.
The dispute is between their Canadian employer and the American giant Boeing, which has complained Bombardier got £135 million from Britain and £750 million from Canada to subsidise the new C-Series passenger jet, partly built in Northern Ireland. The US has decided that is unfair competition, imposing an import duty of 220%. That's angered the British government. Today the Defence Secretary was in Northern Ireland to name a new battleship, firing a warning shot at Boeing, who make aircraft for our military.
This is not the kind of behaviour that we expect from a long-term partner, and I've made that very clear to Boeing when I met them earlier in the summer, and I've also made very clear to the new United States ambassador in London. This is not the behaviour we expect of Boeing, and could indeed jeopardise our future relationship with Boeing.
Theresa May is allied to the Canadian Prime Minister on this one, raising it with him on her trip to North America last week. She also spoke to President Trump, who has been less helpful. And this dispute doesn't just concern foreign allies, but those who keep her in Downing Street.
Everyone realises how important Bombardier is to Northern Ireland, and we will use our influence with the government to make sure that that continues.
Downing Street are insisting this is an interim judgment. The final decision won't be made by America until February. But post-Brexit, Britain was relying on the US to open up trade with us, not close it down with tariffs. Tonight, the concern is with the thousands of jobs at Bombardier and the millions more which rely on trade to spread Britain's wings, not clip them. Paul Brand, ITV News.
Unions have accused Theresa May of being asleep at the wheel instead of fighting to protect workers' jobs after a preliminary ruling by the US government to impose an import tariff of 219% on Bombardier's new passenger jet, putting thousands of Northern Ireland jobs at risk. Theresa May said she was bitterly disappointed at the move after the US Commerce Department claimed Bombardier had used unfair state subsidies to sell planes at artificially low prices. Our Home Affairs correspondent Andy Davis is outside Bombardier's plant in Belfast. Andy.
John, there are 4,100 workers based here. Bombardier has had a major economic presence in Northern Ireland for 30 years, so they're no strangers here to job losses. But what's feared is that this dispute with rivals Boeing could end up with a very hefty blow to this plant here, which is why we saw the UK government coming out today, issuing a stark warning to Boeing, saying that their actions could be jeopardising any future defence contracts. It's all got very political and very messy. Under a foreboding Belfast sky today, in the historic shipyard bordering Bombardier, the Defence Secretary was unveiling the name of a new warship. Apt then that it fell to him to fire the opening salvo against Boeing, the American aviation giant whose ongoing battle with rivals Bombardier could now threaten the future of this Belfast plant.
Well, Boeing is a major defence partner of the United Kingdom and was one of the big winners from the last defence review. So this is not the kind of behaviour that we expect from a long-term partner. This is not the behaviour we expect of Boeing and could indeed jeopardise our future relationship with Boeing.
At the centre of this dispute, Bombardier's C-Series aircraft, whose wings, as this promotional video shows, nearly 1,000 Belfast workers assembled. Last year, Bombardier's Canadian owners agreed a multi-billion-dollar deal to sell 125 of these to Delta Airlines. But then rivals Boeing complained. They alleged improper Canadian government subsidies saw the planes sold way below cost price. And yesterday, in a preliminary finding, US trade officials agreed. The result? A proposed 219% tariff on each plane imported into America. And with that to happen, the whole deal could be scuppered, with, said many in Belfast today, potentially disastrous consequences.
It's devastating for the workforce inside Bombardier and for the knock-on effect it will have on the total economy of Northern Ireland, given the 10% of all our economic output comes through Bombardier workplaces.
The DUP leader, Arlene Foster, more co-pilot than passenger in Theresa May's government, said she would be using her influence on this and had this to say about Boeing.
They are a huge company. They do a lot of business with the UK government, mostly in defence, but they have to realise that they cannot do damage to one of our strategic companies and not expect there to be consequences for that.
While in Brighton, the Labour leader ridiculed the Prime Minister's hopes for a post-Brexit US trade deal.
Where thousands of jobs are now at stake, thousands of jobs at risk. A Prime Minister betting our economic future on a deregulated trade deal with the US might want to take a moment to explain how 220% tariffs are going to boost our exports from this country.
A final ruling by the US authorities is expected early next year, but American Boeing will surely court the patronage of a protectionist president in this particular dogfight. Another test of Anglo-American political relations looms. So first blood to Boeing here, who claim all they're after is a level playing field in the aviation market. Bombardier, meanwhile, say they've done absolutely nothing wrong. There is a fair amount of time for all of this to play out, but I think we're going to see Theresa May under intense pressure from the DUP to lobby Donald Trump, while at the same time she's having to navigate the delicate mechanics of establishing a post-Brexit trade relationship with him. I think what this dispute shows powerfully is just how very challenging the redrawing of the global trade map is going to be.
Andy Davis in Wales. In Ireland, I'm sorry, Northern Ireland, Belfast. Joining us now from Westminster is the Shadow International Trade Secretary, Barry Gardiner. Barry Gardiner, if Theresa May and your opposite number, Liam Fox, can't persuade Donald Trump to back down on a 220% tariff against a British situation, what would you and Jeremy Corbyn do?
We would take it to the World Trade Organization dispute resolution mechanism, which is exactly what the government should already have done. The moment, the absolute moment that the US put that 219% tariff in place, we should have taken it to the WTO, and we should have said so straight away with the strongest possible protest, because there is absolutely no basis under WTO rules for this tariff, and it is illegal, and we should make our case in the proper way, not by issuing counter threats like Michael Fallon has done. Very, very foolish to do that. That puts you in the wrong as much as America. What you should do is you should take it through the proper rules-based process, because in fact Boeing left that market, that C-series, that mid-series market, a long time ago. And of course what they would have to be able to do at the WTO is to prove that there had been harm to them. Given that they weren't in the market, there was no harm to them, and that is why these 4,000 jobs are being needlessly put at stake. But let me be clear. Michael Fallon, by saying what he has said, is also then putting at stake the 16,500 jobs in the UK that are Boeing jobs. Well, let's foolish of him.
Let's just check one thing. I mean, have you actually checked whether the WTO has been involved in this thing?
The Prime Minister has not referred this yet to the WTO, and it should do.
Now, I mean, it's all very well, but this, of course, is the future. I mean, this is what Britain has said it's going to be doing once we leave the European Union, the WTO and all the rest of it, and these tariffs are what we're going to have to deal with.
Look, this is the whole reason why we have always said that actually negotiating a proper trade agreement is not something that you can do overnight. You remember very well the sayings of Liam Fox and David Davis, that it would be easy to negotiate a trade deal in Europe, and it would be easy to get a quick deal with many other countries around the world. Yes, of course, it would be easy to get a quick deal, but a quick deal will not be a good deal, because countries like the United States want to liberalize our tariffs and our markets to their produce, but they don't want to liberalise their markets.
Sounds like you're not looking forward to Brexit, Mr. Gardner.
No, no. Look, we are committed to leaving the European Union. What we want to make sure is that when we do, we are not doing it at the expense of jobs and our economy.
But thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.